Okay, so our first video is going to be about the multiplication rule. This is actually straight off of our Unit 2 packet, page 4. So the multiplication rule says there's actually two multiplication rules. And because we discussed independence in class on Friday, I'm going to give both, okay? There's like two forms of the multiplication rule. So the idea here is that we want to determine the probability that two events are happening at the same time. So there's one choice of the probability that A and B are happening at the same time. And the first option would be that the events are independent. So we would just multiply the probability of A times the probability of B. These are for independent events. And the second concept for the multiplication rule would be for dependent events. And that would look like this. We still are finding the probability of A and B at the same time, but if my events are dependent, then I would take the probability of A, and then I would have to multiply by the probability of B, given A has already happened. And this would mean that B is dependent on A, right? This is implying that A actually does make a difference if it happens first. All right, let's take a look at the first problem. I'm just going to grab a highlighter because you know I love highlighting stuff. It is possible for a student to do well in both math and history class. Oh, totally. If the probability a student gets an A in math is 0.68, the probability, I don't know why that's an if statement. The probability the same student gets an A in history given they got an A in math is 0.72. So we are now saying that this is a given statement. So math impacts history. Okay, that's what this is saying based on the information that we're given. So it's saying, what is the probability a student got an A in math and an A in history? So we're being asked an A in math, so I'm going to use the letter M for that, and an A in history. And based on the second part of the rule for multiplication, if we know that we have the probability of an A in history given they got an A in math, then we can set this up like so. We would look like the probability they got an A in math times the probability they got an A in history given they got an A in math. And I know both of these numbers based on the paragraph above. So let's go ahead and fill them in. The probability I get an A, or this student gets an A in math, is 0.68. And the probability this student gets an A in history, given they got an A in math, is 0.72. And it would just be like me to not have my solutions sitting next to me when I need them. So let me just grab my solutions and write the answer down from there. So the answer to this is 0.4896. This would be the probability the student gets an A in math and in history. So in this case, the multiplication rule is actually being used to find the probability of one event and the other. Remember that addition was used for one event or the other. Okay, catch me in the next video for the next problem on page 4.